Billionaire pretends to be in a coma, but when she hears her black nurse Marcus's confession, she asks him to marry her. "I know you can't hear me, but I need to say this," whispered Marcus, carefully adjusting Eleanor Vance's oxygen tubes. His voice trembled with emotion he had been holding back for weeks. "Before I met you, I thought people like you were all the same. Cold, calculating, concerned only with money." In the hospital bed of the presidential suite, Eleanor Vance lay motionless, her eyes closed and her breathing controlled. At 36, she was the youngest CEO of the world's 500 largest companies and had built a technology empire that revolutionized early childhood education through affordable artificial intelligence. Her company, Vance Education, put educational tablets in the hands of children in underserved communities, transforming lives one screen at a time. What no one knew was that for the past 2 weeks, she had been fully conscious, faking a deep coma while listening to every word, every conspiracy, every betrayal being planned around her. The accident on her private jet had not been an accident at all. Someone had sabotaged the hydraulic systems, and Eleanor suspected exactly who. "But you're different," Marcus continued, discreetly checking to make sure they were alone. "I found out that you fund schools in poor communities, that you pay for college for employees, things that never make it into the media." He paused, gently running his hand down her arm. "I saw you cry in your sleep when they brought you the news about the kids at the school in the Bronx who got the new tablets. A billionaire crying over children she's never even met." Eleanor's heart raced, but she kept her breathing perfectly steady. Marcus had noticed something that even her own family didn't see. Her true compassionate nature hidden behind years of relentless corporate leadership. 3 weeks earlier, during a seemingly innocent family gathering, her sister Sophia had strangely insisted that Eleanor travel that particular weekend. "You need to rest, Ellie. You're working too hard," she had said with a false concern that now made sense. "If you could hear me," Marcus continued, his voice now almost a whisper, "I would tell you that you taught me that the heart doesn't see color. It doesn't see bank accounts. It only sees kindness. And I fell in love with that kindness you hide from the world." Eleanor had discovered the full extent of the conspiracy little by little, pretending to be unaware as she listened to conversations in the hallways. Sophia had corrupted Dr. Wallace, an unscrupulous neurologist, to declare irreversible brain damage. Even more shocking, her ex-fiancé Ethan, who had ended their relationship amicably 2 months earlier, was working as Sophia's legal advisor, planning a complex corporate maneuver that would transfer control of Vance Education through a power of attorney forged years earlier. "I'll protect you," Marcus promised, adjusting the pillow under her head with a gentleness that contrasted with his large, strong hands. "No matter what the other doctors say, no matter what decisions your family wants to make, as long as I'm here, no one will hurt you any more than they already have." It was at that moment that Eleanor realized something extraordinary. While her own family was betraying her for millions of dollars, a stranger, a 28-year-old black man who faced daily microaggressions at that elite hospital, was willing to risk his career to protect her. Marcus had grown up in the same kind of community Eleanor secretly helped, had studied nursing on a scholarship, and didn't know she could hear him when he confessed his deepest feelings. "They're going to try to move you out of the ICU tomorrow," Marcus whispered, checking the monitors once more. "I overheard the conversation at the nurse's station. Your sister wants to transfer you to a specialized clinic she's chosen, but something isn't right about it." Eleanor almost smiled. Marcus had the instinctive right. The specialized clinic was actually a private institution where Sophia could control Eleanor's access completely and speed up the declaration of permanent mental incapacity. The plan was diabolical in its simplicity. With Eleanor officially incapacitated, Sophia would take over the company through a power of attorney, sell strategic parts to investors she and Ethan had already secretly negotiated with, and pocket hundreds of millions. But what Marcus also didn't know was that Eleanor had meticulously planned a revenge that would make his family pay dearly for their betrayal. And now, after hearing that touching confession from a man who loved her without knowing her fortune, she realized that her plans were about to change dramatically. If this unlikely love story between a billionaire and a nurse from the suburbs touched your heart, Subscribe to the channel to find out how a confession whispered in the silence of a hospital would turn into the most surprising twist a family of traitors could ever imagine. The next morning, Eleanor heard familiar footsteps approaching her suite. Sophia entered accompanied by Ethan, and the conspiratorial tone of their voices made Eleanor's blood boil. "The transfer is confirmed for tomorrow," Sophia announced, checking something on her tablet. "Dr. Wallace has already signed the papers declaring progressive neurological deterioration. At the private clinic, we will have complete control over visits and treatment." Ethan chuckled softly, a laugh Eleanor knew well, the same one he gave when he closed especially lucrative deals. 12 years planning this, Sophia. 12 years pretending I cared about your workaholic little sister. You played the role of the doting fiancé. Very well, Sophia replied sarcastically. I almost believed you when you asked her to marry you. Eleanor remembered that day 3 years ago. Ethan had organized a romantic dinner at the most expensive restaurant in town with rose petals and a $2 million ring. She had cried with happiness, thinking she had finally found someone who loved her for who she was, not for what she had. The irony now suffocated her silently. The timing was perfect, Ethan continued. As soon as she signed that power of attorney, just in case something happened during his business trips, our plan was complete. She didn't suspect a thing. Sophia approached the bed, watching Eleanor with clinical coldness. You know what angers me the most? She always thought she was so smart, so special. The brilliant Eleanor Vance, revolutionizing world education? She sneered, mimicking her sister's tone of voice. As if she were better than all of us. Eleanor forced herself to remain still as Sophia cruelly adjusted the pillow under her head, pushing her uncomfortably. The hatred in her own sister's eyes was more painful than any physical injury. It's always been this way, Sophia continued, her voice heavy with decades of pent-up resentment. The little prodigy who built an empire at 25. Mom and Dad never looked at me the way they looked at her. It was always, why can't you be more like Eleanor? Or, your sister would never let us down like that. Ethan placed his hand on Sophia's shoulder in a falsely comforting gesture. Soon you'll have everything you deserve. Vance Education is worth $4.2 billion. Even after we sell off the less profitable parts, there'll still be $2 billion left to split between us. And the best part, Sophia smiled maliciously, is that she'll never know. She'll spend the rest of her life in a vegetative state while I turn her precious company into something truly profitable. Enough of this free education for disadvantaged communities nonsense. Let's focus on what really matters, profit. As they talked, Eleanor recalled the sacrifices she had made to build Vance Education. At 17, she had used her $500,000 inheritance from her grandparents to develop the first prototype of an educational tablet. She slept 4 hours a night, programmed during the day, and studied business at night. At 25, when the company became a global success, she could have pocketed billions, but she chose to reinvest 80% of the profits in free education programs. Have you talked to the Asian investors? Asked Ethan, glancing at his expensive watch. They're eager to expand into the online gaming market? Sophia replied. They want to turn educational tablets into entertainment platforms, much more profitable than teaching poor children to read. The door opened softly and Marcus entered with a tray of medicines. His presence brought a strange calm to Eleanor, as if he were the only anchor of humanity in a sea of betrayal. Excuse me, Marcus said politely. I need to check the patient's vital signs. Sophia and Ethan exchanged angry glances. Hurry up, Sophia ordered dismissively. We're discussing important family matters. Marcus approached the bed and with his usual gentleness checked Eleanor's pulse. For a moment their eyes met. He didn't know she was conscious, but there was something in her gaze that seemed to whisper, I will protect you. Nurse, Ethan called arrogantly. She's being transferred tomorrow. Make sure all personal belongings are removed. We don't want any worthless objects accompanying the patient. Yes, sir, Marcus replied. But Eleanor noticed an almost imperceptible tightening of his jaw. He knew something was wrong, even if he didn't fully understand what it was. After Marcus left, Sophia approached the bed again. You know, Ethan, sometimes I think it would be easier if she just didn't survive the transfer. Accidents happen in ambulances. The comment made Ethan hesitate. Sophia, we've talked about this. The plan is to keep her alive, but incapacitated. It's safer legally for now, Sophia murmured, coldly smoothing Eleanor's hair as if she were an object. But who knows what the future holds for a person in a vegetative state? As they discussed her fate as if she were a commodity, Eleanor began to mentally formulate the first steps of her revenge. She had 15 hours before the forced transfer. 15 hours to turn her apparent vulnerability into the most devastating trap Sophia and Ethan could ever imagine. But first, she needed to trust someone. And there was only one person in that hospital who had shown her true compassion. A nurse who had fallen in love with her soul before he even knew her name. Every cruel word that came out of Sophia and Ethan's mouths was being silently filed away in Eleanor's strategic mind. They completely underestimated her, treating her like a helpless victim. They had no idea they were fueling the determination of a woman who had faced and defeated corporate giants far more intimidating than them. At 2 o'clock in the morning, when the hospital was plunged into silence, Eleanor made the most risky decision of her life. Marcus had just finished his night shift and was approaching to check her vital signs one last time. "Marcus," she whispered, opening her eyes for the first time in 15 days. He nearly dropped the medical clipboard, his face showing a mixture of shock and relief that made Eleanor's heart race. "My God, you're how?" "I've been conscious for 2 weeks," Eleanor interrupted, her voice but determined. "I faked the coma to find out who tried to kill me, and now I need your help." Marcus glanced quickly at the door and then approached. "I knew something was wrong. Dr. Wallace's neurological tests didn't make sense. Your pupil reactions were always normal, but he insisted you had severe brain damage." "Wallace is being paid by my sister," Eleanor revealed, watching the indignation grow on Marcus's face. "Sophia and my ex-fiancé Ethan orchestrated the plane crash. Tomorrow they want to transfer me to a private clinic where they can keep me sedated indefinitely." "That's monstrous," Marcus murmured, squeezing her hand gently. "But why trust me? You don't even know me." Eleanor smiled for the first time in weeks. "You fell in love with me, thinking I was a terminally ill coma patient. You confessed your feelings to someone you believed could never love you back. That kind of character doesn't fake it, Marcus." Over the next 2 hours, Eleanor meticulously outlined her plan for revenge. Marcus discovered that he was talking not only to a billionaire, but to a brilliant strategist who had built an empire precisely by anticipating betrayals and preparing devastating counterattacks. "My phone is in the nightstand drawer," Eleanor instructed. "Inside are contacts for investigative journalists, lawyers specializing in corporate fraud, and even a private investigator who works exclusively for me." Marcus discreetly retrieved the device. "But how are we going to prove any of this? It's her word against theirs." Eleanor smiled with a confidence that made Marcus understand why she had become one of the most powerful women in the world. "Marcus, do you think I survived 15 years in the corporate world without learning how to protect myself? 3 years ago, when Ethan insisted that I sign that power of attorney just in case, I installed a recording app on all my personal devices." She explained that her personal tablet, which Sophia had carelessly left on the nightstand, contained automatic recordings of every conversation that took place near it. Every conspiratorial word, every cruel plan, every despicable comment, everything was documented in audio files with precise timestamps. "What's more," Eleanor continued, "my company has a security protocol that Sophia is unaware of. Any attempt to activate the power of attorney automatically triggers a full internal investigation. My personal assistant, Michael, has been gathering evidence for 2 weeks." Marcus nodded, impressed. "So, you already knew they would try something like this?" "Not specifically, but Ethan has always been overly ambitious, and Sophia has always hated me for being more successful. When they started seeing each other secretly 6 months ago, yes, I knew I stepped up the protective measures." During the night, Marcus helped Eleanor discreetly coordinate with her outside team using prearranged codes. She sent messages that appeared random but activated specific emergency protocols. Michael will arrive tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning pretending to be a medical consultant. Eleanor explained. My personal lawyer, Jennifer Hayes, will come disguised as a nurse at 10 o'clock, and at 11, when Sophia signs the transfer papers, we'll have journalists, authorities, and enough evidence to completely destroy her credibility. Marcus watched Eleanor work with growing admiration. How can you stay so calm? Your own family tried to kill you. Eleanor paused, and for the first time, Marcus saw vulnerability in her eyes. Because I've learned that anger clouds judgment. And when you come from where I come from, a woman building an empire in a world dominated by rich white men, you can't afford to make emotional mistakes. She told Marcus about the hundreds of meetings where she had been underestimated, the times investors had tried to steal her ideas, the contracts she had almost lost because other executives thought a young woman couldn't be competent. Every injustice taught me to be smarter, more prepared, more ruthless when necessary. And now? Marcus asked, checking the door again. Now Sophia and Ethan are going to find out what happens when you underestimate someone who has spent her entire life being underestimated. Eleanor replied, her eyes flashing with a determination that made Marcus understand why she had come this far. At 5 o'clock in the morning, when Marcus had to resume his normal duties, Eleanor closed her eyes again, returning to her performance as an unconscious patient. But something had fundamentally changed. She was no longer a victim feigning vulnerability. She was a predator preparing to pounce. Sophia and Ethan would arrive in a few hours, confident that they were hours away from stealing billions of dollars. They had no idea that their every move was being meticulously anticipated by someone who had turned the art of strategic revenge into an exact science. For a moment, when Eleanor heard footsteps in the hallway and quickly resumed her comatose posture, any casual observer would have thought she was just another helpless patient awaiting her fate. But those who know true strength know that it grows precisely in silence, fueled by the patience of those who know that the sweetest justice is that which is served at the most unexpected moment. At 9 o'clock sharp, a man in a suit arrived at the hospital reception desk and introduced himself as Dr. Alan Carter, a neurology specialist from Harvard University. Sophia didn't suspect a thing. After all, what nurse from the suburbs would know elite medical consultants? Michael, Eleanor whispered as he approached the bed, pretending to examine her pupils. Is everything ready? The recordings are being analyzed by the FBI right now, Michael murmured, adjusting his stethoscope. Jennifer arrived 5 minutes ago, disguised as a nurse from the morning shift. The journalists are positioned downstairs. At 10:30, Sophia entered the suite triumphantly, accompanied by Ethan, Dr. Wallace, and 2 paramedics for the transfer. Finally free of this charade, she whispered to Ethan, believing Eleanor couldn't hear her. Is the paperwork ready? Ethan asked, checking his expensive watch. All signed, Sophia replied, displaying the transfer documents. In an hour, she'll be at the private clinic, and in 48 hours, we'll have complete control of Vance Education. It was then that Jennifer Hayes approached, discreetly removing a tie from inside her nurse's uniform. Actually, Mrs. Reynolds, there are some additional forms that need to be filled out. Sophia frowned. What forms? Dr. Wallace didn't mention anything about that. Jennifer smiled coldly. Criminal forms. My name is Jennifer Hayes, attorney specializing in corporate fraud, and you are officially under arrest for attempted murder, document forgery, and conspiracy to commit corporate fraud. Sophia's face paled instantly. This is ridiculous. My sister is in a coma. Your sister, interrupted a firm voice from the bed, is perfectly conscious and has heard every sordid word you've spoken over the last 2 weeks. Eleanor opened her eyes and slowly sat up in bed, her icy gaze fixed on Sophia and Ethan. The look of shock on their faces would have been comical if it hadn't been so satisfying. Impossible, Ethan stammered, instinctively backing away. The tests, Dr. Wallace confirmed. Dr. Wallace, Eleanor said calmly, is being arrested right now for falsifying medical reports and accepting bribes. $50,000 deposited into his offshore account last week. Money traced directly to one of Sophia's shell companies. Marcus entered the suite, followed by 2 federal agents. Mrs. Vance, Do you need medical assistance to get up? Eleanor smiled the first time Marcus had seen that radiant smile. Thank you, Marcus. I'm perfectly fine. Sophia tried one last desperate gambit. Eleanor, you don't understand. I was trying to protect you. Ethan convinced me that. Sophia, Eleanor interrupted, rising from the bed with impressive dignity. I have recordings of the two of you planning my murder, literally discussing whether it would be easier if I didn't survive the transfer. Michael approached with a tablet, playing the crystal-clear audio. It would be easier if she just didn't survive the transfer. Accidents happen in ambulances. Sophia's voice rang loud and clear in the deadly silence of the suite. Ethan tried to slip out discreetly, but found two federal agents blocking the door. In addition to the recordings, Eleanor continued, we have bank records showing payments to Dr. Wallace, emails between you discussing the sabotage of my plane, and my favorite, Ethan. You were stupid enough to use your Vance Education corporate card to purchase tickets for your romantic getaway with Sophia in the Caribbean. You planned to celebrate my death in style. Jennifer handed over the official documents. Sophia Reynolds, you are under arrest for attempted first-degree murder, criminal conspiracy, corporate fraud, and document forgery. Ethan Martinez, you are under arrest for the same crimes, plus extortion and breach of fiduciary duty. As the handcuffs were snapped shut, Sophia made one last desperate plea. Eleanor, please, we're family. Mom and Dad would be devastated if they knew. Eleanor approached her, her voice low, but sharp as a razor. Mom and Dad already know. I called them at 6 o'clock this morning and explained everything. They're flying back from Europe right now, not to support you, Sophia, but to publicly witness their complete repudiation of your actions. Ethan, now handcuffed, tried to maintain some dignity. You can't prove we sabotaged the plane. Eleanor smiled with icy satisfaction. Actually, I can. Remember that conversation 3 weeks ago when you casually asked about the jet's maintenance protocols? I was recording, and the technician you bribed has already confessed everything in exchange for immunity. When Sophia and Ethan were escorted away by the agents, Eleanor finally allowed her emotions to show. Marcus approached hesitantly. How do you feel? He asked, touching her arm gently. Relieved, Eleanor replied, looking him straight in the eye. And there's something I need to tell you, Marcus. I heard your confession that night. Every word. Marcus blushed deeply. Eleanor, I'm sorry. I know it was inappropriate. It was the most beautiful thing anyone has ever said to me. Eleanor interrupted. You fell in love with who I really am, not what I have. And now I have a question for you. Eleanor took his hands, completely ignoring Michael and Jennifer, who watched with discreet smiles. Marcus Reed, will you marry me? Marcus's jaw dropped. Eleanor, are you serious? Completely. You risked your career to protect me when you thought I was defenseless. You've shown me more true love in 2 weeks than Ethan has shown me in 3 years. So, what do you say? Marcus looked around at Michael and Jennifer, who nodded encouragingly, then back at Eleanor. Yes, he said, pulling her into an embrace. Yes, 1,000 times. Yes. As they kissed for the first time, Jennifer couldn't resist a sarcastic comment. Well, that's certainly not the turn of events Sophia was hoping for when she planned to take over the company. Eleanor laughed, still in Marcus' arms. Sophia wanted to steal my empire, but she ended up giving me the greatest gift of my life, the certainty of who truly loves me. Outside the hospital, as Sophia and Ethan were placed in different cars under the constant flash of cameras, one question remained unanswered. How had an attempted murder motivated by greed become the catalyst for the truest love Eleanor had ever known? 6 months after the trial, Eleanor Vance walked down the main hallway of Vance Education wearing an elegant navy blazer, her wedding ring sparkling discreetly under the office lights. At her side, Marcus, now formally Dr. Marcus Reed Vance, after quickly completing his MBA in hospital administration, reviewed the financial reports for the last quarter. The numbers are impressive, Marcus commented, pausing in front of the digital display showing the company's global impact. 400,000 more children received educational tablets this quarter, and revenue is up 42%. Eleanor smiled as she looked at the photos sent by teachers from rural schools in Brazil, Africa, and Asia. Children smiling as they learn through the technology she had made accessible. I've discovered that doing good is surprisingly profitable. Who would have thought? Across town, Sophia Reynolds was serving the second year of her 15-year sentence for attempted murder. Her former mansion had been auctioned off to pay the damages, and Ethan was facing similar charges in a different state penitentiary. The newspapers had covered the scandal extensively, turning their names into synonyms for family greed and betrayal. "You know what impresses me the most?" asked Marcus, adjusting the tie Eleanor had given him as a gift on the day he officially took over as the company's chief social responsibility officer. "How you managed to turn their attempted murder into the biggest expansion in Vance Education's history." Eleanor laughed, remembering the day she decided to use the publicity generated by the scandal to launch the Global Education Without Borders campaign. The public outcry over the story, a billionaire who was nearly killed by her own family for helping poor communities, had generated record donations and partnerships with governments around the world. "The irony is delicious," Eleanor admitted, walking past the conference room where she and Marcus had planned the expansion into new continents. "Sophia wanted to destroy my social project to focus solely on profit. Now, thanks to the exposure she gave me, we're impacting more lives than I ever dreamed possible." Marcus stopped in front of the new wing of the building, the Marcus Reed Center for Health Ethics, funded entirely by Vance Education and dedicated to preventing cases of medical negligence like the one that nearly killed Eleanor. "I still can't believe you named an entire center after me. You saved my life by risking your career," Eleanor replied, gently touching his face. "And you taught me that true love has no price, color, or social class. This center will ensure that other vulnerable patients have the protection you gave me." That afternoon, they attended the opening of another school in Chicago funded through the Reed Vance Foundation for Inclusive Education. Children of all ages tested the new tablets while their parents watched with tears in their eyes. Many of them workers like Marcus had been seeing their children gain access to cutting-edge educational technology for the first time. "You know," Eleanor said during her informal speech to the families in attendance, "a year ago, I almost died trying to do exactly this. Bring quality education to communities like yours. Some people thought I was wasting my money." Marcus held her hand discreetly as she continued, "Today, I can say with certainty, investing in you was the best decision I ever made, and almost dying for it has brought me the greatest gift of my life. Finding someone who loves me for who I am, not what I have." At the end of the event, a reporter asked about Sophia and Ethan. "They got exactly what they deserved," Eleanor replied calmly. "But more importantly, their actions taught me the difference between people who want to take something from you and people who want to build something with you," Marcus added with a smile. Sophia tried to steal Eleanor's empire, but she ended up giving her something much more valuable, the certainty of who really loves her. That night, in their new apartment overlooking the city, deliberately smaller and cozier than the mansion where she had lived with Ethan, Eleanor and Marcus reviewed their plans for the coming year. The company was expanding into 15 new countries. The Ethics Center had prevented 3 cases of medical malpractice at partner hospitals, and they were expecting their first child. "You know what's the funny thing about this whole story?" Eleanor asked, caressing her still discreet belly. "Sophia spent her whole life jealous of my success without realizing she was wasting precious time she could have used to build something of her own." Marcus reflected for a moment. Maybe she never understood that true success isn't about taking something from someone else, but about creating something that makes the world a better place. Eleanor nodded, looking out the window at the brightly lit city. "The sweetest revenge wasn't putting her in prison, Marcus. It was proving that a person driven by love can build something much greater than people driven by greed could ever destroy." 6 months earlier, Eleanor had pretended to be in a coma to find out who wanted to destroy her. Now she woke up every day next to the man who loved her when she seemed most vulnerable. Working at a company that transformed lives around the world and expecting a child who would grow up knowing that true love and social justice aren't opposites. They're forces that multiply when united. Sophia tried to steal Eleanor's empire, but ended up giving her the greatest treasure possible. The absolute certainty that she had found not just a partner, but someone willing to risk everything for love. And if this story of family betrayal, true love, and justice touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that the best revenge is always building something greater than your enemies could ever imagine destroying.